Thank you very much, Alex. Let's start off with some good news. Some of you may or may not have heard of Signifyd. It's very kind of you, Alex, to describe us as a successful company. We're incredibly proud of the journey we've been on, which has ultimately manifested itself in us being recognized now as a unicorn business. So going back just over a month ago, we completed a Series E round of funding. We raised another $205 million worth of financing. And we've been, as I say, valued as a unicorn company, valued at 1.4 billion. And what is it that we do? Why are we worth that great sum? Well, we're an e-commerce revenue optimization company that specializes in fraud prevention. And I think e-commerce has never been so relevant or challenging as it is now. The explosion that we've all seen and that we witness within the industry, or even as consumers, has largely been brought about because of the pandemic, but also I think a lot to do with what Julian was mentioning around new technology and innovation. So the opportunity for retail is that we've seen a 50% increase in e-commerce transactions. A third of all retail now within the UK happens online, and yet a third of, or just over 30% of consumers are new to the internet. People who haven't necessarily bought across those channels before, might not be identified by those retailers. And the final stat on this page, 20% of non-UK customers have bought something from a UK retailer. So truly global commerce is here upon us right now. And yet, despite the fact that there's this massive opportunity, that consumers have perhaps unrealistic expectations of digital and the cost of acquisition being really high, retailers are still applying a one-size-fits-all approach. They're still using legacy technology in terms of ignoring regional trends and the dynamic nature of e-commerce. They're applying blanket approaches to how they screen consumers and treat consumers. Those legacy rules and deterministic approaches often mean that good consumers are screened out. The two other points at the bottom, something that we see all the time is that merchants and their tech stack have a very kind of fraud rate bias. So they would rather decline a transaction than take a risk on that. And a lot of that is to do with the notion that the liability for card not present transactions sits with the merchant, when I think respectfully, they would probably agree, they don't have the tools, the time, the experience, or even the inclination to know whether there's a good order or not. This stat often people fall off their chair at, right? So globally, across all of e-commerce, fraud is only worth 1% of all of e-commerce. And yet, if we look at the UK and Western Europe, somewhere between 5 and 10% of all transactions are declined because of the fear of fraud. So it's a lot to do with the context I talked about in the previous slide, that merchants are declining transactions just because they don't know. Enter Signifyd. So this is a very typical e-commerce funnel for a merchant prior to the use of our service. Everything that you can see in turquoise blue is an order, a transaction, somebody trying to buy something from you. So for every 100 people that click checkout from a merchant, that merchant in this example is only shipping 86 out of 100 orders. And yet you'll also notice on the right-hand side, the two columns, they still have fraud. So they're still not doing a great job of conversion or managing fraud. Then Signifyd gets involved and two things happen. One, the approval rate and the conversion rate has jumped in this example from 86 to 97%. That's 11% of additional revenue, free money, as Alex and his crew call it. And the second part is that the fraud and abuse chargebacks have gone to zero. That's because of our liability shift. So any order that Signifyd approves on behalf of our merchant, we take the full liability for it. So that's everything, the value of the shipped goods, any taxes, processor fees and penalties, etc. How do we do it? Well, we use machine learning, we use big data across a commerce network of thousands of merchants around the globe to effectively better screen transactions. So it's more breadth and depth of data. And we use probabilistic models instead of deterministic rules and filters. So we're looking for reasons to approve an order. And just because a consumer is new to a particular merchant, they very likely won't be new to us. We will be able to identify them across a number of the data points that you can see here in terms of our screening. And my final slide, just these are some of the brands that we work with. These are some of the enterprise logos. I kind of call this a bit of logo bingo. But I also thought I'd pull out some results that we've delivered on behalf of some European merchants that we've worked with for quite some time. So you can see here, these 4 merchants have seen a significant proportional increase in terms of their approval rate, their conversions, top line revenue through literally the use of better, broader data with more of a conversion focus. Instead of looking for reason to decline an order, we're helping them approve more.
Brilliant, thanks. Probably only one question today. Julian, over to you.
Yeah, well,